This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci fi show where things can get totally radical. Now, today I will be welcoming a very talented, very underrated character actress, and I'm talking about Jane Halloran. Jane, of course, has been in so many great movies like Hero at Large, Modern Romance, Body Heat, Leanna, Unfaithfully Yours, A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon, My Girl, and she's done some great theater plays. And she had something to do with the casting of movies like Heaven's Gate and Christmas Evil. Yes, you all know how much I love Christmas Evil. And so we're going to talk about all of that stuff today, and I cannot wait. I wanted to clarify and address a couple of things really quickly. The reason why I didn't mention on Friday when I interviewed Lisa Galantine that it was the 1400th interview, it was two reasons. One, as much as I am very happy and feel accomplished for 1400 interviews, right? I just didn't think that it was that important because I've done so many anniversary milestone shows of the number of the show, and I just feel like I'm getting repetitive. Don't get me wrong, for 1500 I'll go back to it, but for right now, didn't really need to address it. But I do want to address this. Another reason why I didn't mention the milestone was that I was under a lot of stress. A podcaster contemporary of mine, I can't say competitor anymore because he'll take it the wrong way, went on someone else's podcast on Friday and blasted me without naming me. And I am so fucking pissed about that. He brought up all of our personal drama lately, and I am just really hurt by it. I mean, I stopped trusting this guy 2 years ago, but now the trust level has completely demolished, and I am so mad. And everybody that knows me and knows him, that I know that I can trust, that come on my show frequently, they've all been made aware of it, and they are just disgusted. And so I've been going through that this weekend. I don't get invited onto other people's podcasts, even though I have done one podcast before. But I would never fucking do that to blast somebody, not unless I really, really hated the person, So it just makes me mad that happened. So, anyways, I'm getting off my soapbox today. Here is my interview with Jane Halloran. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
As long as I can remember, I wanted to act.
Mm-hmm. Did you do school plays and community theater?
Yeah, but even at 2 and 3, I was getting dressed up and making up plays, and I was always involved in it.
Yeah. Were you born and raised in New York?
I was born spent my first 10 years in Brooklyn, and then moved to Long Island, and then college, and then back to Manhattan.
Amazing. Yeah, it must have been an amazing time. You probably went to the Broadway shows when you were growing up, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think my first Broadway show was when I was 13. On my 13th birthday, I went to see Guys and Dolls.
Oh, wow. Who was in that play, if you remember?
Yeah, it was the same cast. It was Robert Alda, Vivian Blaine,
Mm-hmm.
Stubby K.
Right.
God, I can't believe I remember that many.
The Stubby K, most people don't remember him, but I know exactly who he is.
So you're a theater buff?
Theater, movies, TV, everything. Music.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I was a music buff, although I still love every kind of music. But I wasn't deeply involved in it like I was everything about film and theater and TV when it came out. Although TV I was late to, but when I was a child, my mother did not really like being a mother. So I had what you probably wouldn't call a good mother, but the perfect mother for me, because I was let out of the house every morning with my father and sister when they went off to school and work, and I didn't have to come home till 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in those days, parents let kids do whatever they wanted, pretty much.
Yeah, but so I spent a lot of time in the Nostrand Avenue movie house.
Yeah, I've met people who can remember when there was no TV. Literally no TV. And
Well, TV. I didn't have a TV until I mean, I lived a whole life before I had a TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just imagine. It's the same thing with the younger generation. They can't understand that there was no internet 30 years ago.
I think TV and internet are wonderful and not great for talent.
Yeah, exactly. So after high school, did you study acting anywhere?
Yeah, I always studied acting. I studied in college. Even before college, I studied with different people. I studied with Michael Gazzo. Do you remember who Michael Gazzo is?
Oh yes, God, he always played a mob guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I studied at Neighborhood Playhouse, but I didn't go the 2 years. I went to summer session.
Mm-hmm.
I studied at AMDA, American Musical and Dramatic Academy, because I had a big job as a model agent, so I had to study at night.
Mm-hmm. Who were your classmates? Any of them go on to become successful?
Tyne Daly and her husband George Brown.
Wow.
Yeah, Tyne.
Wow.
And I know there are others. I just can't remember.
Was Bobby Lesser there?
No, Bobby Lesser wasn't there when I was there. I knew Bobby Lesser through his best friend Chuck Hirsch, whom I dated.
Oh. Yeah. Did you go to HB Studios too?
No, never did, and I always regretted it.
Yeah.
I would like to have studied with Uta Hagen.
Yeah, Herbert.
I don't know why. Things happen. You live different areas. You're involved in different things, and you can't do everything.
Right, and you get complacent, get caught up in a comfort zone. You're like, I don't want to go that far to experience
no.
this.
I that definitely never got caught up in a comfort zone.
Okay.
I had a terrible acting teacher called Bob Modica at American Music at AMDA, and he took a real dislike to me, and I think he set me back a few years. As having taught myself, I know how you could do that if you put your mind to it. I can't imagine why you would want to do it, but he did not like me. And I don't know what was wrong with me, because I sure had a mouth and I got everything else I ever wanted to do. But I was intimidated by him, and it took me a long time to get out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he must have been bad, because I never heard of him.
Exactly. Well, Tyne was with him, and George Brown was with him, and there are other people who were with him that were... they'll probably names will come to me maybe during the conversation. I don't remember now.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, it's just, as long as I've been doing this podcast, I've been finding out, people know people, and I'm just like, wow, God, it was such a small community back then, Like I said, this was before the internet. It was such a contained world. Everybody knew each other.
Yeah, it was. And directors, actors, playwrights all knew each other, and so did casting directors. I mean, public theater. Joe Papp, if you were lucky enough to live in the Joe Papp years, you were lucky enough to experience theater at one of its best levels.
Right.
Because Joe made a family out of everything. And, I mean, his casting directors, Mary Cahoon and Rosemary Tischler, were so wonderful. And Jack Hofstas, the director, was a casting director there. And I was very much a part of the public theater. And that was like home. And so that's how you knew so many people, because that's how directors and writers and actors were all put together.
Right. In 1968, you were in the Broadway production of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. How was that experience?
Fabulous. My first audition.
Yeah.
I was 28, and I was I had a model agency, and I had a whole life, but I had no intentions of ever giving up the idea of becoming an actor full time. And yeah, those were great days, but I can't now. I know I've totally forgot what the seed of that was. I got off in my mind of all those some wonderful people I remember.
You were 28 when you got that play. It was your first audition.
Yeah, right. Okay, Jean Brodie, right.
Yeah.
I can't remember how I got the. Oh, yes, I do know. Amy Taubin. I was dating a guy named Arthur Sherman, a director who was very close friends of Amy Taubin, and we went there for dinner one night. And as I was leaving, she was playing Sandy in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. That's the lead girl. Right. And when I was leaving, I said to her, "Listen, if your understudy ever leaves, give me a call." And a week later, she gave me a call and said, "My understudy's leaving. Would you like to audition?" I said, "I would." Yeah. And I was auditioning for the part of a 10-year-old, so it didn't look hopeful. But when I heard the kids speak, they were never going to get that job. So I got it, and God, I loved everything about it. Robert Whitehead was producing it. Never has there been a more wonderful, fun, loving, funny, witty, terrific man. And he was not yet, but soon to be married to Zoe Caldwell, who was just the greatest woman ever. And what a great star to begin your career next to. She was so much fun and open and giving and charming, and to have a bunch of girls that ranged from 5 years old to 30s, and to keep that all together and have it organized and so much fun. You have to be a person of stature.
Right.
Zoe was one of the most impressive people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, it had a great cast. I could see Roberta Maxwell, Joseph Marr. Yeah, that's a pretty good Broadway debut to be in.
Well, it's Roberta that I replaced.
Oh, okay.
But it was Kathy Burns. I guess you know as Catherine Burns.
Right.
And it was a wonderful cast. It was just wonderful. I can't imagine a better first experience. I'm very, very grateful, and I feel very, very fortunate for that.
How many performances?
I mean, it was my first audition.
Right.
I played it for, I think I was in it for 8 months and we closed.
Wow. Yeah. What people
so
do...
that's every day but Monday.
Right. What people do Broadway, it's like 8 shows.
What?
It's like 8 shows a week, right?
Well, then it wasn't. We didn't do a Sunday night show. We did
a matinee?
A matinee on Saturday night, and a matinee on Sunday.
Right. Then In 1973, you did Outcry with Michael York and James Keach. How was that production?
Well, I was a standby,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a 2-character play, and it was Cara Duff McCormick and Michael York.
Right.
And I mean, I became very close friends of Cara. We're still friends. She's a brilliant actress. She was not appreciated by the playwright, let me put it that way. Okay. And he made a big mistake because she would be perfect for every one of his leading characters. It was a very good experience for me, though.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, how do you get cast in Puzzle of a Downfall Child?
God, that's slipping my mind. Puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Who directed Puzzle?
Jerry Schatzberg.
Who directed it?
Jerry Schatzberg.
Oh, Jerry Schatzberg was a close friend of mine. That's how I got it.
Mm-hmm. So he was aware that you were doing Broadway at the time, and wanted to give you some on-camera experience.
I don't think it went through his mind quite like that. But Jerry was a good friend, and of course, I was a model agent. He was a very important photographer, and he gave me this part. I don't remember having to read for this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very small part.
Right. He believed in you, and he's like, here, take it, it's yours.
No, he had somebody call me and hire me. That was somebody called my agent and hired me. I don't remember Jerry ever doing it. That's it. We were very professional.
Of course. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward financed the movie. Did you meet them?
No, I met them in political circles.
Did you work with Faye Dunaway in that?
I did, and became friends with Faye. She was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Great fun.
Yeah, she was on a roll during that period. Bonnie and Clyde, Chinatown. Yeah.
She had a great patch of blue right there. Yeah, it was wonderful. And she was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. My God.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
I mean,
gorgeous.
Somebody showed me a copy of the film last year or the year before, and my mouth was open every single scene of her. She's just so gorgeous.
Yes, she can.
Not the best actress in the world, I must say.
Really, what do you think about her acting?
Well, just what I said. She's not the best actress in the world.
Do you think she's a personality? Do you think that she's not?
Yeah.
She can't play just everything.
Oh, she certainly can't play anything, just anything. Faye is not the best actress. I think that says it all.
Mm-hmm.
But she was beautiful, and she had a wonderful mystique about her, and she was very sexy. She had everything going for her, and I'm not sure the talent wasn't there. Something stood in her way. Because there were too many very talented people that recognized her as being talented from a very early age, back in college. So I'm not sure I saw the whole story play out.
Right.
But having worked with her, and she was much more secure posing than she was acting.
Okay, that makes sense.
She would have been a great model.
Right. I've met a lot of actresses who only modeled for a short time, and the reason why that was because they were too short, and that they want taller actresses. I mean taller models, but.
No, I don't really think that's it. I think they modeled for a short time, and they wanted to be actresses, so that's what happened. Shortness really didn't come into it because you never get into an agency if you're short, so that really doesn't play anything. It's because they wanted to be actors, and something happened, and they got a shot, and they left modeling. All good actresses leave modeling very quickly because people recognize their talent.
Right. Now, the 80s became like, your big heyday as far as on screen roles were concerned. So, did you just want to focus on, theater and the modeling agency for a while, and then you decided you were ready for more on screen work?
You make it sound like life is what you decide it's going to be. Of course, it's nothing like that. I mean, I took a job with a photographer because because my mother was a gambler and blew all our money in Vegas. So I had to support my family. So I had to get a job as opposed to being an actor. So I called a boyfriend to see if he was back in town from college.
Right.
And his brother answered, and his brother was famous for never working. So as a joke, I said, "So, Petey, you know of any jobs available?" And he said, "Actually, I think my stepmother does. Let me put her on." And he had a wonderful stepmother who was in the photography business.
Right.
And she said, "Jane, I do know of a job." And so, ironically, it was with Howard Zeef, who ended up years later becoming the man I would live with for a great deal of my adult life.
Oh.
And so I called, and anyway, I got this job at this kind of crummy catalog house. But I learned everything. And from there, I was hired away by a model agency called Plaza 5 by a wonderful woman named Sabina Cronin. And that's how I became a model agent. And it had nothing to do with the acting. I was studying acting, as I said, at night. The two never merged. And then I went off to Christina Paolazzi, Countess Christina Paolazzi. You're too young to remember, but she did a nude cover of Harper's Bazaar. Right. And was quite a character who wanted to be a movie star. So she hired me to come to Hollywood with her to be what I did as a model agent, which I said that was impossible because I didn't know the business.
Right.
But I needed to get out of town because I had just broken my engagement off. So I jumped at it. So we came out here and had a great time, and she didn't become a star, and I learned the business.
Right.
And when I went back, I went to work. Eileen Ford called me and said, "Come to work for me," and I did, and loved her.
Right.
Ironically, people didn't love Eileen. I loved Eileen. She was great, and I learned a lot from Eileen, and I worked very hard. And God, I'm lost now between Eileen Ford and what the rest of my life was.
Well,
I started acting there. I can't remember. Oh, I know what happened. Jerry Ford fired me.
Uh-huh.
So I said something terrible to him because he deserved it, because he did stupid things.
Yeah.
And Eileen was brilliant, and Jerry was just a screw up. And so I said something terrible, and he fired me on the spot. And so about 2 hours later, that's how fast it took, Barbara Thorpe Stone, who I had worked with at Plaza 5, called me and said, "I'm starting this agency. You should start it with me. It's called Stuart Cowley is putting it together." I said, I'm there. So that's how I started at Stuart. And I only worked half day, and I did my acting. And then when I was living with Howard, I just quit and just started acting full time. I know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Already told that story. I got the job in Prime Miss Jean Brody, and that was the story right there. That ended it. I was an actress from there on in.
Okay. Nice.
God, you got my whole life story in 5 minutes.
So how did you?
No life.
Yeah. How did you become a casting person for a little bit?
Well, the photographers that were photographers when I was a model agent became directors. And so they knew I had a great eye, so they would call me and say, help me with this. So that's how it happened. I would be casting for people like Harold Becker and Howard Zieff and different people like that.
Yeah, Christmas Evil is one of my favorite Christmas horror films. I've talked to Brandon and Rutanya and Bobby about the movie. Did you bring any of those people to Louis Jackson's attention?
Christmas Evil?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I don't know what movie you're talking about.
That's where Brendan Maggard is the killer Santa Claus.
I've never seen that.
Okay, it says here on imdb.com that you did additional casting for that, and IMDb is always inaccurate, so I'm not surprised. I apologize.
Oh no, don't apologize. I just think it's interesting. I may have not remember. It might not be you at all.
Okay.
All those people are good friends of mine and people whose talent I love.
Yes. I just adore Rutanya. She is just a wonderful lady.
I remember Rutanya when she was Ruth.
Really?
Rutanya and I studied together way back in, well, she lies about her age, so I shouldn't give that up. I tell the truth about my age.
Mm-hmm.
So I shouldn't be telling you what years this worked. So, but anyway,
Okay.
We were in the same class together with Alan Miller, Alan Miller's a wonderful actor and was a fabulous teacher.
Right. How about Heaven's Gate?
And that's Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate. That was a wonderful experience because, Mike is crazy in his own quiet way. Well, he's not with us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanne Corelli, who was Mike's mate, live in love for many, many years.
Right.
I knew them from the photography fashion business. And they called me. And but here is the deal. Mike was only going to be in New York City for 4 days. Ever. So I had to see every single human being in Manhattan. That was my demand on me.
Right.
And the agents knew me as an actress, so it was tricky, but it was a wonderful experience, and I got to meet all these fabulous actors, and it was just wonderful. However, I got fired by Mike. I can't remember exactly why, but it seemed fair. See, Joanne was with me the whole time, and she kept saying, we've got to see more. But I knew it was going to be a disaster because he was only there 4 days. So how am I going to show 150,000 actors to Mike in 4 days? Anyway, we did, and at the end of the 4 days, he fired me. But he did have his cast, so. Mm-hmm. But it was a great experience. I was so exhausted. I was so relieved when he fired me. I can remember he was at the Sheraton, and I walked in, and I was so tired, and he looked at me and said, Jane, I'm going to have to. I said, fire me, right? And he said, yes. I said, oh, thank God. I'm so tired. And I said, okay, this was great fun. I kissed him goodbye, because I knew Mike. Right. I kissed him goodbye, and I said, good luck with the film. If you need anything, call me. And, it was perfectly amicable. And I was relieved. I just wanted to sleep for 2 years. And that was that.
Yeah.
And then everybody that I saw was in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody talks about, how the movie is like one of the biggest bombs in history, right? I can remember going on IMDb 20 years ago, and it had a score of like 3.7, but now people are starting to come around and like it as a cult film. It's got a 6.8, which I just think is extraordinary, and I haven't seen that with a whole lot of movies on IMDb.
I don't know what those numbers mean, but it's a good film.
Right.
And I just think they were out to get Mike because Mike has a big mouth and he lies about himself and he builds. Well, he's not with us. I said that already, but he would lie about himself and he would tell extreme stories like he told the New York Times that he went to Harvard. But that's so easy to prove not true. And he was getting caught in all sorts of lies all the time, and I never understood lying. It's so stupid.
What? So, what?
People are very interesting in and of themselves. They don't really have to lie to make themselves more interesting.
Right. So, what kind of lies did he tell?
Well, I just told you the biggest one. He said he went to Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
To the New York Times.
Right. So he was insecure.
And, what?
So he was insecure, so that's why he lied.
I guess he was insecure. Yes, I heard you. Mm-hmm. I guess he was insecure, and when we were doing Heaven's Gate, he got a rifle, and I remember him holding it up in the hotel, and I remember Joanne saying, "Mike," they talk like this, "Mike, you can't hold a gun like that." And Mike said, "Joanne, this is exactly how you hold a gun. Milius told me how to hold a gun, and this is how Milius told me how to hold it." And she said, "What was the what?" Oh, they had this wonderful phrase for each other. Mm-hmm. Oh, damn it! It slipped my mind. But things like, "Don't make me laugh.
Right.
Don't hold it like that. You're crazy." And they had that Brooklyn Italian accent going in. I just loved it. I ate the whole thing up.
What was it like working with John Ritter in Hero at Large?
Well, if there is another human being ever born that is as nice as John Ritter, I've never met them and never hope to. John Ritter, as far as my experience is the most perfect human being ever met. Fun, smart, funny, kind, just the best. I just absolutely fell in love with him. I couldn't have asked to be in a film with a better person in my life. He was just wonderful.
Yeah.
He was a man who lived every moment as it was his last, enjoyed every moment, and died young.
Yeah.
So he did the right thing. He lived right for what was going to happen.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things about him.
There is nothing but good things about him. He was just so wonderful. He was hard to believe he was so good and funny and fun and easy. And he made everything that surrounded us fun.
Yeah.
And I like a good time. So I jumped into every moment that had fun painted on it in any way, shape, or color.
Nice. Martin Davidson, he's an amazing director, of course. What was he like?
Well, he was an old personal friend of mine. Marty actually represented me. He was an agent at Ashley Famous, which became International Famous. And, so I knew him.
And then you worked with Albert Brooks on Modern Romance. How was that?
Well, I was a huge Albert Brooks fan before anybody ever knew who he was.
Yeah.
I never missed a show he was ever in. I was huge, and I was living with Howard Zieff for many years, and I kept telling him about Albert and telling him about Albert. And so he comes out to L.A., and he strikes up a relationship with Albert over something. Mm-hmm. And it was so ironic because I've been talking about Albert for so many years. To go, all right, about Albert Brooks. Leave me alone about Albert Brooks. But it was just ironic. And then Albert and I worked in Howard's film together, and then Albert cast me in his film because of that film.
Yeah. I think he's such an underrated comedian. I don't think he gets the respects that he deserves as a comedian, except for maybe from other comics who were around when his albums came out. But he's a talented filmmaker, I have to say.
I'm not sure that Albert couldn't have any kind of fame Albert wanted. Albert is a very, very, very smart man and incredibly talented in many areas. And I think that Albert, rather than life, called all the shots for Albert's life. I would not worry about Albert missing out on anything. I just don't think Albert had it in him to miss out on anything.
Right.
He really he's just an extremely smart man, and the funniest man I ever knew. As I said, I was a huge Albert Brooks fan before he was famous, and it was just funny that Howard would end up using him a lot, and then because of that, I got to work with him.
And then you do the landmark classic thriller Body Heat, which is such a great movie. How did you get cast in that?
I know why. Larry was screening the John Ritter film.
Right.
And he saw me and he said to Wally Nocita, who knew me but never liked me, so I never would have get cast. But he saw me and he said to her, "That's who I want for Gloria." So I was in the commissary because I was working on what was I working on? I was working on some film with Howard, editing it with him, and one of his films. And
Private Benjamin, maybe.
Wally came up. I don't think it was Private. I think it was earlier than Private Benjamin. Private Benjamin, I really was upset that I didn't get a credit on Private Benjamin. I was there every single day in the editing process.
Oh, wow.
So I was. Howard had led me to believe he was going to give a thank you on that film and never did, and I was very, very hurt by that. And so were the casting people. The two casting people were very upset that I didn't get that, because the three of us got along beautifully and really worked so hard together, and it was Howard being Howard. It was easier for him. His girlfriend at the time, who eventually became his wife, had a real thing about me, and it was just easier for him to go home without having me on that screen. So it took away from me to make life easier for him, and I never forgave him for that. But not that it changed anything, but in my heart, I never forgave him for that.
Yeah.
Wally Nocita ran into me in the commissary and said, he wants to use you. Could you come in and meet him? I went in, I read, and I went home, and I already had the part. Again, I know I am running over with love for these people, but there's no way to describe how wonderful Larry Kasdan is. He's just fabulous. I've been so lucky with directors. I've gotten directors that that are just angels and brilliant and talented and fun, and I've just been so as what's her name, Spencer Tracy says in Woman of the Year, there's not much of her, but she's terse. There's not much of my career, but it's terse.
It's a good quote. Then you do one of my absolute favorite roles you've ever done, Ruth and Leanna. How did John Sayles come to cast you in that wonderful movie?
I don't remember how John came to cast me. I'm sure I...
Did you know him?
I remember. I don't remember how. I guess he just called the agent. My agent submitted me. But I went in on my birthday. And Maggie had just left the room. Luckily for me, because Maggie never liked me. But I went in, and so it was just John and me. And it was his birthday. I said, oh, no, it was my birthday. It was my birthday. I said, oh, John, I hope that you like me because it's my birthday, so you have to give me the part. And he said, okay, you've got it. That's it.
He's a nonconformist. He's always done it his way in movies.
Well, it's not so much that he's a nonconformist. It's not something that he takes stands on. John just is a very, very strong individual who does what he wants to do. He writes, he reads, he directs, and he does it when he wants to do it. And if there's not money for it, he'll find the money. And if there is no script, then he's not going to bother with it. He is one of the most fabulous people I have ever known in my life. And I am so grateful to have known and worked with John Sayles, because you don't meet more than one John Sayles in your life.
Yeah. He's just a brilliant, screenwriter and director. I talked to a screenwriter.
I don't think he's the greatest director.
Go ahead.
I don't think he's the greatest director in the world. I'm not a big John Sayles fan of his films.
Mm-hmm. I know they're not for everybody.
I'm much splashier. I like a lot of pizzazz. I like a lot of money spent. I like beautiful costumes. I've been going to the movies since I'm 3 years old.
Yeah.
So I like splash. I like glamour. As a matter of fact, we used to always kid about this because he'd be talking about, we had such different ideas of interests. He was interested in boxing and I was interested in fashion. We just didn't, except politically, we didn't see the same things. Nothing that interested him interested me,
right,
except that it interested him.
That totally makes sense.
He was just, I was so lucky with directors. But John I worked with the longest and loved the deepest because I just did. But Larry was it was divine. He was just wonderful. I've just been so lucky.
You sure have. You've worked with
work with not just great directors. They weren't just great directors. They were great human beings.
Right. They communicated with the actors. It wasn't just all about the visuals. It was communication with the actors. They wanted good performances out of the actors.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's who they were. You get on a set and things that you just said don't come into play. They really don't come into play. You're talking about life and politics and fashion, black versus white, and you just talk. I didn't mean that biracial. I meant that X versus Y. Though that always comes into my conversation because I'm an activist. But I don't mean as directors. I mean as human beings. I've been very, very, very lucky. I'd rather have had my career, which was not terribly exciting, but with the people that I had it with, than a big career with people that weren't so wonderful. And that's just it.
Was there a part of you that could relate to Ruth? What attracted you to the part?
That it was a job. You just want to work. And you didn't really care what it was. And I loved this guy, and I said, it's my birthday, you have to give me the job. And when I went home, it was not a good part at all. She had 2 declarative sentences through the entire film. All she did was ask questions and build up Leanna, build up Leanna, build up Leanna. Mm-hmm. So it was a question of how interesting can I make asking questions be? Because that's all it was. And then John realized it at some point, and he put a couple of declarative sentences in. And then I did a lot of hamming it up and adding things of my own that he kept and he let happen. But we never even discussed it. that I recall. I don't remember us having a conversation about it. It wasn't a great script, and it wasn't a great film. But he was great, and the experience was great, and Linda was great. Everybody on that film was just wonderful. It was just a wonderful experience.
Linda Griffith, she passed away in 2014. Did you stay in touch with her?
No, I didn't. And, you know, you just can't. Linda lived in Canada.
Uh-huh.
You think you're going to stay friends forever with everyone you ever work with because you fall in love with everyone you ever work with. And then life happens and you don't. And Linda was just, I had so much fun with her. And it was good that I was there because, I was a lot older than she. And she was in a foreign country. She'd already been here for a long time doing a play on Broadway. And she was getting lonely and she was by herself. And so I was glad that I was there because we had a lot of fun together and she trusted me. And I think I made it a lot easier for her. But
Right.
She was a terrific, terrific woman.
Yeah, she was.
I loved her.
I know. I think she should have been, another Meryl Streep. She was just so good.
Oh, no. No, Linda was not Meryl Streep. But then I've never thought Meryl was Meryl Streep. I've always thought that, I can't think of her right now.
I mean, there's other actresses of Meryl Streep's generation that I think that are better than she is, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean, though.
Meryl is so brilliant. She's the smartest person in show business. She doesn't make a wrong move. She is so smart. I think she is incredibly talented. I don't think it's ever been that important to her. She knows what she wants, and she got exactly what she wanted.
Right.
Meryl is that strange combination of completely calling the shots, but always being nice.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very, very odd combination of wonderful things. Meryl's great. She's great. And I think she's a great actress. I think she could have been if she wanted to be, but I think she wanted to be a bigger star than a great actress.
I totally agree. Do lesbian women come up to you and tell you that the movie enabled them to come out?
They have in the past. They have, yeah, which always makes me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't think the movie is good itself,
never.
Yeah.
Well, I was happy because it was important for the gay community, and that made me very happy. So, and they all loved it. So I just, we did it on like $300,000, and it was hard, and John worked very, very hard on it, and it's a good film. It's a good film. It's not a great film, and it's not my kind of film.
Right.
But I do love the relationship between the two women, and that's worth the film. And it was important to the gay community, and that was what was important to me. It was really a great feeling to have done something of import to your female compatriots.
There was a movie that came out around the same time that was very controversial. It was called Making Love with Harry Hamlin and Michael Montequin. It was the same situation except it was two guys, and every star in Hollywood turned this movie down because they just thought that their careers would be over. I love that movie and I love this movie because it was just so bold and ahead of its time, and I think they came out at the right time,
Yeah, but Michael Montequin and Harry Hamlin were not Linda Griffiths and Jane Halloran. They were already names.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael had already done, I know he was in a TV series with my friend George Brown, so
Yeah.
I had met him when they were doing that.
Right.
And Harry was already,
Clash of the Titans.
living with
He hadn't done L.A.
Urs-
Law yet.
Ursula Andress.
Right.
No, but he had an affair with Ursula Andress, and they had a child together. So he was in the news,
Right.
and so they were both gorgeous men.
Right.
So it was a different situation. It wasn't the same situation. And let's face it,
Mm-hmm.
a gay male relationship is a lot more acceptable than a gay woman relationship.
Never really thought of it that way, but sure.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but because men really make those decisions, and women do not really want to see women with women.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
I never understood about that. No, I don't either. But I can't tell you how many of my friends said, you can't do this, you can't do this. I said, well, watch me, because I'm going to do it. And I had a great time. I loved it. I loved doing it. And I loved Linda. I loved Jonna. The cast was wonderful. And we had just, and the crew was wonderful. My God. We had the small crew, but they were all wonderful. And everybody was fun. And it was a great time. It was a great time. I've been very lucky. I mean, you've heard me say it was a great time with every movie you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm. I know there's certain people I've talked to. They've said I've had a great time on this and that. I think it can happen. If you don't let the bullshit get to you.
Well, bullshit never gets to me. I don't care about bullshit. If it's good bullshit, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure what bullshit is anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, what's bullshit for one person is a joke to another. If
Right.
you need to make up stories, then that's a need that I can't help you with, but I'm not going to call you out on it.
That's good.
I don't think it's that terrible. I just don't. I don't think things that other people think are bad. I don't find it terribly bad. Just.
Yeah.
There are great films. When you talk about film, then I get very serious. Then that's a different matter.
Right.
But
you don't let studio politics get to you.
Well, I've never been involved in studio politics. I've never been up against studio politics. They've never come into my line of fire.
Howard, he gave you a part in the remake of Unfaithfully Yours. What do you remember about that?
Having to hit him over the head with 3 bottles before I got the part.
Really?
I needed it. I needed money for my insurance. And I said, you're dead if I don't have that part. So just remember that. Well, I lived with Howard for many, many, many years. We were together for many years.
I can remember turning on
and remained close till he died.
Yeah. I just found out recently he was supposed to direct, and I think he did direct it for like a day or something, Jumping Jack Flash with Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, no, it wasn't quite, he directed for a day. He put that whole film together.
Okay.
That was his baby. Yeah. And then it was difficult from day one. It was a very unhappy, miserable experience for Howard. But not with Whoopi. Whoopi was great.
Oh, yeah. I remember turning...
And what was it finally called?
It was called Jumping Jack Flash.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I know that it had another name. I can probably look it up.
I thought it did too.
Yeah, I could probably look it up, but it did eventually become Jumpin' Jack Flash because the song is referenced.
No, originally it was Jumping Jack Flash.
Huh. That's interesting. But I remember,
Oh, I may have my.
yeah, I remember,
I don't know. I don't know. I may have.
yeah. Going back to Unfaithfully Yours, I remember turning on the TV at 6 years old and seeing Dudley Moore conduct an orchestra with a pig mask, and I was just like, "What is this?" you know? Oh my God, this is pretty funny.
Dudley is, as you see him, that's what he's like off screen. He's just so much fun.
He was
And he's a brilliant man. Brilliant.
brilliant piano player.
Brilliant piano player, brilliant writer, brilliant man. He just is incredibly accomplished.
Okay, so
And fun to be with.
According to IMDb, Jumpin' Jack Flash was originally titled Knock Knock. Does that sound familiar?
Okay. No, not at all. So I only knew it as Jumping Jack Flash. What was it finally? Jumping Jack Flash?
It was finally Jumping Jack Flash.
Wow. Isn't that bizarre? And I have it as having the name changed.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Whoopi. I never met Whoopi. We didn't get that far with it. But, yeah. It's a fun movie.
It is. It's a really fun movie. I talked to Penny Marshall's daughter about it and stuff. How about...
And she was the right director for it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Penny did the films that Howard should have done, and if he had... See, Howard was such a star in New York as a commercial director. He was like a huge star. And so when you're a huge star and you're already in your mid-40s and you come out to Hollywood and it's where you started and you're not treated the same way, you can become a little cantankerous.
Yeah.
And not that he was difficult, it's just that his career, the career that he dreamt he would have, he had in a different area.
Right.
And even though he went on to direct some very good films, but he was never the star as a film director that he was as a commercials director.
So you had met him in the theater?
And that's because he spent his youth... No, not theater. He directed TV commercials.
Oh, okay.
How did I meet? I met Howard at a party. That's how I met Howard.
Mm-hmm.
No, I tell you how I met Howard. I was working for a model agency, and I never answered the phones because I had a different job than everybody else. I did everybody's makeup and got them all test shots and introduced them to the photographers. I had a good eye for who would like whom. And the phones were all ringing. Somebody said, "Jane, pick up that phone." And I picked it up, and I said, "Plaza 5." And he said, "What the fuck are you doing? You cancel Pat Hughes on me." That was his girlfriend. "I have her all day tomorrow." And he said, "Fuck," about 320 times. And I said, "Fuck you," and hung the phone up on him.
Yeah.
Well, I was fired for that.
Oh, boy.
And Pat Hughes called him and said, "This girl is the reason I work. I never worked until she got to the agency, and you've just had her fired." So that night they called me and rehired me. But that's how I met Howard. So then at a party months later, Pat Hughes is with Howard. She comes over and said, "Jane, I'd like you to meet somebody. This is Howard Zeef." And he said, she said, "Howard, this is Jane Haller and the girl you tried to have fired." He went, "Oh my God. I thought you were like an old lady." And that's how I met Howard.
Do you remember working on A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course I do. I remember everything I ever worked on. Now, what was that again?
A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon.
River Phoenix was the munchiest human being in the world. Just so adorable. God, I was so in love with him. He was so adorable. And he would... I don't know why he was concerned about me. He was always concerned about me. And he'd come to my room, and I was on the ground floor of our hotel. And he'd knock on the door and say, Jane, there's this really cute man at the bar. I think you'd like him. Come on, come back with me. I think he'd work for you. I said, what are you doing trying to fix me up all the time? I do it fine on my own, sweetheart. Don't do that. I never have the same taste as people think I'll have. Anyway, he was just, I loved him more than I can ever say. He was, and his grandfather was with him, and his grandfather was great. Mm-hmm. But River was just the most lovable human being I've ever met in my life. Ever. Bar none. He was everything. He was smart. He was funny. He knew exactly what was going on from all sides, east, west, north, south. He knew it. He missed nothing. And he was gorgeous, and he was divine. God, I loved him so much. And he was with Martha Plimpton at the time, but he was very close to Ione Skye. Mm-hmm. They were kind of like boyfriend and girlfriend, but he was still really in love with Martha. And I loved Ione. She was the daughter of an old friend of mine. Mm-hmm. So it was a wonderful closeness there with the whole group of us. That director is the only director, at least to my knowledge, that did not like me. And boy, did he not like me. And I knew that. And I don't know why he hired me. I guess he forgot. He was somebody that took an... I can remember the first time I ever met him, which was years before that. He walked into a room and he looked at me, and he actually had a physical reaction where he stepped back. And I thought, wow. Boy, I've never been disliked that strongly before. Or immediate. And then I was up in Howard's office one day, and a friend of ours, Danny, this guy was a friend of ours who was producing a film. He said, come down and meet my director and tell him how much you liked it. And I said, no, I can't. That guy hates me. He said, how do you know him? I said, no, every time he looks at me, it looks at me badly. And so he said, Jane, you know that's in your mind. I said, okay. So I went downstairs and I said, hi. And he took a step backwards again. And I said, I just wanted to tell you that I love your film. He said, thanks, and turned around and turned away from me and walked away. He just had such a bad reaction. So that when I came in, I said to my agent, there's no point in me going up for this. This guy hates me, and for no reason. So there's something about me that reminds him of somebody. Anyway, so she said, Jane, I said, I'll be there. So I went, and it didn't happen. And I read, and by the time I got home, as I already said, I had the part. The message on the machine was, you got the part. So I was shocked. And then we started working together, and he just couldn't stand me. His sister came the last day of work, and she came into my trailer, and she said, and she was a sweetheart, and she said, I just want to tell you that you look exactly like my mother, and you don't just look like her. Every move you are just like a duplicate of my mother. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I had only heard this years ago, you would have saved me a lot of hurt feelings. So that was the point. I reminded him of a mother he didn't like.
How was working with Meredith? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, the kids were wonderful. Meredith was great. I loved her, and I love Ione. The kids were all great. I've never had trouble. The kids are usually really good. That their mothers have beat it into them that they have to be good, and they are. Yeah. But Meredith was fun. Why? Do you have a feeling about her?
Well, I interviewed one of her best friends going back like 35 years a couple weeks ago, and Meredith heard the interview, and she told me about it. I was very, very proud of that. Who
is the friend?
Her name is Lala Sloatman. She's Frank Zappa's niece.
Never heard of her. Yeah, no, Meredith was fine. The kids were lovely. I've been very lucky with kids on shoots because I've had a lot of them on shoots, and they've all been fine. Some of them you just fall in love with.
Like on My Girl?
My Girl. Who was the kid on My Girl?
There was Anna Klumsky and Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, right. Well, Macaulay, I've already talked about. Anna, yeah, I didn't really have any time with Anna, but she was fine. She was lovely. But Macaulay, I mean, I was just in love with him. He just was unbelievably adorable and so smart. He was just heavenly. I loved that kid. And that's why Howard ended up using him. Howard always loved my taste in actors, so if I taught, I mean, every actor I've ever loved,
yeah,
if there was a part for him in a Howard Z film, they got it. Because I talk about actors like I am a fan.
right.
And he remembers that because he's a director. And he loves casting, and he loves actors. He did. I'm talking about him as if he's still alive, and he's not. But yeah, I've been very fortunate to have jobs that other wonderful actors were there.
Right. So at some point in the 90s, did things take a turn where you didn't want to act anymore in movies, or things happened?
When were the 90s? 90s. You know, I never make such complete decisions like you make it sound.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wander over into another interest, and little by little drop the last one. God, this is the 2020s. So Jesus, I can't think of what the 90s were. I can't find an incident to hold it, to capture the 90s for me. What man was I with in the 90s? You know, it used to be I always knew where I was by the boyfriend I was with, but now that's not possible because there are no men in my life. It's the thing about getting old, you lose the man in your life.
Yeah.
I don't remember the 90s. Did I do any film in the 90s?
You did film and television. The last thing you did was Home Improvement in 1997.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was my Brazil decade. Okay, so I was more in Brazil than I was here, and every time I came home, I'd get a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what did you ask me now I remember? And now I remember the 90s. What did you ask me about them?
So did you just retire from on-camera work, or did you find another passion to...
No, as I said, I never retire from anything. Yeah, I found another passion. His name is Marcelo. He lived in Brazil. Yeah, that was my passion in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he lived here, too. So, but I had a next-door neighbor who was an actor who did a commercial in Brazil and fell in love with a Brazilian girl, and she came here to visit, and we became best friends immediately. We had she spoke very little English, and what she spoke I understood completely, and we just had the same sense of humor, and we just had the greatest time together. And then about the second year she was here, she had a big party and invited this man. And that was kind of it for the 90s.
Mm-hmm. So since then, have you been...
I spent a lot of time in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. What's it like over there in Brazil? I never hear much about it.
It's fabulous. You know, I've never encountered the dangerous parts. But you only need one Brazilian and you've got a party. You have never... I mean... Brazilians are not like any other human beings. They're walking parties. They are just the most fun-loving, adorable people I've ever known. I just love Brazilians. It's nothing is ever. What's really important is what the emphasis is on. They don't emphasize what isn't important. And I love that about them. And it's a wonderful. I spent most of my time in Sao Paulo, and Sao Paulo, both in the city and at the beach, and it was just. Well, I just love Brazil, and I love Brazilians, and that's where I spent most of my 90s. Oh God, that's awful. Yeah, that's where I spent most of my 90s. I was rolling up on your page, and I found this callus with some candy in it. That's pretty disgusting. God,
I have a very morbid sense of humor.
That's not morbid. That's just repulsive.
Yeah. So
that's that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the 90s. The 90s were my Brazilian years. Yeah.
So have you been doing mostly theater since then?
No, I've been doing mostly nothing. I'm mostly just writing.
Are you going to write a memoir?
No, I've been working on a novel, which has a lot of autobiographical stuff in it. But, I don't think you're right. I don't know who's going to buy my memoir. I think you have to be a big name to write a memoir. I like my life, but I can't imagine anybody else being interested.
Yeah, I've been noticing since I've been doing this podcast, so many people are coming out with memoirs, and I think the reason why it is because they're tired of answering the same questions, yet so many of them continue doing these podcasts. I just don't understand it. It's really crazy.
Wait a minute. You really are naive enough to believe that people write memoirs because they're tired of answering the same questions?
I think certain people are, but a lot of the time they're doing it, to make money.
I think maybe zero people are. Do you know what it's like to write a memoir?
Yes, I'm writing.
You don't do that because you're tired of answering the same.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you don't get asked the same questions as actors do.
Right.
But you don't write it. You know how hard it is. Then you don't write it because it's hard to answer. It's boring to answer the same questions. You write it because you have a compulsion to write it, not because you get tired of answering the same questions.
Right. But
and actors, they may be the same questions, but you are getting asked, and that shows you're still alive in the public, and that is a compliment. So, I don't see the big problem for any actor getting asked.
Right.
The same questions.
It's just I talk to the popular horror movie people, and they've been asked the same questions for 20, 30 years, and they're all coming out with books, and it's pretty bizarre. And I get a lot of read my book first before interviewing me, or you can go on my website and buy the book, and all this stuff. And it's like, I just want to talk to you on my podcast, I have pre-existing knowledge of your career. And
well, they want to sell a book, sweetheart.
Yeah.
They're not tired. They just want to sell the book.
Right. Right.
I think that you have... I think you have a lovely, and it would be wonderful if more people had your attitude, but you have a lovely view of actors and movies and movie actors, and it's so nice to have somebody who thinks that highly of us.
I appreciate that, Jane. I really do appreciate that. I love what I've accomplished the last 4 years. I can't believe I've made it this far, too. I just thought I was going to do it, for a short time, and then something else would come along, but I'm just enjoying what I do.
Oh, and tell me, what do you mean it? Tell me more about it.
It.
What you're talking about.
Oh, about
this show?
About this
you mean the show?
About this podcast, yeah. Because I just thought, someone told me, when I was starting, the average span of someone's podcasting career in the last decade, since podcasts have been popular, has been, just a few months and stuff. And a lot of people give up because they haven't gotten the guests they want or the following and stuff. But I've enjoyed it so much. I've kept going.
That's really fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
I never would have guessed that. I would have thought that it was an easy thing to accomplish, because, first of all, you have a perfect personality for it, because you're smart and you're sweet and you're kind, and so you're immediately and you're appreciative. And there's nothing nicer than being appreciated. Let's face it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know your stuff, and so it's a pleasure to talk to you, and it's a pleasure to be thought highly of by you, because you're really dedicated to what you do, and that always means something to me anyway.
It's been that way to a lot of people. Thank you so much, Jane. I'm gonna cry later on.
Don't cry, enjoy it.
So really quickly, how's COVID been for you in this whole pandemic we're in?
No, I just got my 2 shots and stayed in, and when I heard I had to get a third one, I went, and I'm planning on going out and getting it, because it's just across the street. But I don't know. I have this fear that I'll be the first person to run right into the germ as I leave my front door.
Yeah, I don't have any fear because I've had my 2 shots. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. In short, it hasn't really changed my life more than I would like it. It's given me a reason to stay in, which of course I love doing. So I say that, of course, when I've never loved staying in. This is a new facet to my personality in my life. I've always been, since I'm born, I was a busy baby, moving, crying, wriggling, and never stopped moving until I reached 80. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, it's like, I love my apartment. I love my house. I love staying in. And I don't know if that's just your 80s or what the deal is. I certainly haven't gotten, nothing seems to have changed physically for me. And with age, thank God, I knock wood, which I do have here. But I don't know. I like the excuse of COVID to have to stay home. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think it's put really.
Oh, you got to get rid of that picture. That is just disgusting, that picture with the callus with the candy in it. Oh, it's awful. It's awful, Tommy. You got to get rid of that.
Do you get offended by body?
Whose callus is that?
I have no idea. It was just some random stock picture that I found on the internet that someone sent me.
Do I get offended by body what?
By body humor.
It depends. I hate bathroom jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big, I like sophisticated humor.
Nice. Well, Jane, I want to say thank you so much for coming on today, Go ahead.
Well, this was a delight. I enjoyed it completely, Tommy. You're great at this, and I really enjoyed you.
Thank you so much. I relished the compliment, and I hope your writings get published, and that you continue being the amazing, strong lady that you are.
I hope that I can be an amazing, strong lady. I will reach that someday, I hope. Anyway, it was delightful. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I think you're terrific, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and just keep at this.
Thank you, Jane. I sure will.
Good luck with the book. Keep me posted. Keep me posted. I'd love to know about the book.
Yes, I will keep in touch with you, and please stay safe out there.
I'm not going out, so I'll be fine.
Okay, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And to you, Tommy, and to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Jane Halloran. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh, what a great lady, a strong lady. Lady that doesn't suffer fools, but she's got a great heart, and I enjoy talking to her today. This also brightens everything from the shitty weekend I've had, so thank you so much, Jane. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.